Take, for example, global warming. I would love for somebody to tell me that humans are the reason for the global warming without lying. If they can do that, then I will completely agree and take necessary action and write legislation that would help it. But like I said, until you can prove it, well then we have a moral responsibility to do the right thing as citizens of the earth. But to write law and then enforce it, it requires a reason to do it. And it requires, as far as I'm concerned, an intelligent reason. Give me a good reason, and then I will consider it. But just to do it to just save the environment doesn't make sense. I understand that, you know, our environment is very important, but I don't think that somebody's going to build a factory and all of a sudden start dumping their waste just for the heck of it, going down the Mississippi or right over here into the Gulf. I don't think we have to write legislation to do that.
Where do you get your news?
Where do I get my news? I get my news from all over. Wall Street Journal, CNN. I go online. Safe Eye Review is a good one here in Florida. Fox News. There's so many different news sources out there. NBC, USA. God, I would even say Twitter and Facebook nowadays are considered news sources with, you know, people filtering it out. So I get my news sources from all over. TBT, TBO, they're all good sources.
Who is your political and campaign advisor?
There's multiple people I use as far as a campaign advisor and as far as my political advisor. I would never use just one person or one group, because then you're stuck in one ideology. As far as my campaign advisor, I've even used current legislators as campaign advisors, tell me the best way to do it. I've used such as Ed Hooper. I've spoken with Ed Hooper before. Believe it or not, I've even spoken with Ahern at the REC meetings. I mean, as far as the campaign, how you campaign. As far as political advisement, I speak with my grandparents. I speak with some former classmates of mine. I speak with friends. I don't think there's one person that's going to tell you the right or wrong thing, because it's really all your opinion.
Do you support the construction of a light rail system in Pinellas County?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like I said, it just doesn't make sense. Before you start defining a solution, you have to understand what the problem is. And to be honest, I don't know if the citizens or voters even understand what the problem is. Is there even a problem? If there's a problem, why is a solution being provided? Like I said, if you want an alternative for light rail, there's private companies out there who can provide a much better system, like SkyTran, and they can do so at a profit. And they don't have to be run at the government, by the government at all. And we could, you know, we could always invite them, have them send over an estimate, and let's see if it makes sense, if you want that system. But as far as the government doing it, there's no sense. Like I said, I just don't see a need for it. Why are you providing a solution for something there's no need for?
Sharia law. Will you support a law that limits Florida legislation and judicial review to only consider U.S. and Florida law? Please explain your views.
Well, Sharia law is basically the morals, values, and law of Islam. I would say that the reason you're asking me that is because of the case that was handled over in Tampa regarding the contract between those within a mosque. I don't support any law other than the United States law or Florida law. It's the only law I would support. I think that's kind of a tricky question to answer, simply because the judge who was supposed to interpret the law, he had his view. And that's his role, is to interpret the law. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the way he interpreted that law, but that's his role. And as a legislator, it's not my role to judge him on his job. It's not my role to tell him what to do. It would be my role to write legislation for the state of Florida, which I believe is the ultimate law to go by.
Do you reject any form of tax designated for any type of new passenger rail in Florida?
I do not support any tax for any rail in Florida. Like I said, there's no need for it until there's a need. Let's see if we can come up with a solution. If light rail is a solution, then let's decide and move forward. I think if it was the right solution, there wouldn't be so many people against it, though.
Will you support drilling in the Gulf, and under what conditions?
The BP disaster was one of the worst natural disasters in history. That's one of the reasons why I believe you're asking that question. Also, because oil is very important as our natural resources. To an extent, I do believe in drilling for oil. Do I believe in doing it very close? No, I don't. But we need to get it from somewhere, and we need to get off our dependency from the Middle East. I believe that if all the safety standards were taken care of, that we wouldn't have had the problem we did. A good idea is if an insurance company had to pay off and cover everything or all the disaster, make sure that everybody was compensated and taken care of, and they had to fulfill it, I bet you they would have been out there inspecting that rig way more than the government would have, because it would have been their money on the line. So I believe it can be done correctly. I believe it can be done safely. I do believe that if you are the one, say BP, and you are the one responsible for that disaster, you should be responsible for all the cleanup, all of it. Even 10 years later, if it could be attributed to your rig that did it, then your company's still liable for it. It's called social responsibility, environmental responsibility. And I believe in legislation saying that if you are the one responsible for that, then you are the one responsible for the cleanup and removal of everything. And like I said, instead of relying on the government to test all these, let an insurance company do it. Have an insurance company have to cover that. I bet you that failsafe would have been there, and they would have inspected and made sure it was there, because it would have been their billions of dollars that would have had to pay for the cleanup. And they're going to be much more responsive than the government is. All you have to do is call your auto insurance, and I bet you they're pretty responsive when it comes to collecting money and making sure you're being honest as you are.
Florida is now a sanctuary state for illegals when compared to other surrounding states due to failure to enact legislation on immigration in the 2011 session, 2012. The U.S. Supreme Court recently endorsed an Arizona law requiring employers to use E-Verify. The court also ruled that Arizona could suspend or revoke the business license of companies that knowingly hire illegal immigrants. In tackling illegal immigration in the 2013 session, will you support mandatory E-Verify for all Florida employers from the first employee, enforcement at the street level by law officers, and enforcement in our schools?
Okay. What you're asking is, would I support E-Verify in 2013? First, I just want to say that you have to understand the problem of what an illegal immigrant is first. Why are they a problem? You have to understand the problem before we provide a solution. The problem is that they're benefiting from taxpayer money without paying in taxes. I would say that that's the biggest problem people have with illegal immigrants. Because at one point, I can say almost everybody's forefathers, and we were all immigrants at one point. So the United States is a country founded on immigration. The problem being is they are not paying in on the taxes, and they are benefiting from the system. One of the ways to turn that around would to make it so that immigration was easier. Right now it's very hard. Okay? I have no problem with people who come in our country and benefit from our country as long as they put into the system, as long as they pay into the system, just like the rest of us. There is a mentality out there that if you make it easier to immigrate into the United States, that people will use the system. You would almost get a mass deportation with the right system of people going out to want to come in legally if it was much easier for them to come in. E-Verify is a good idea. It's a good system. But you do have to enforce it. And I would say that we have legislation all over with the country as well as here in the state, even in our own county, and it's just not enforced correctly. So will it stop the problem that illegal immigrants pose right now? I don't know if it's the most effective way to stop it. So would I support it? I would still have to know more about it, Barb, before I would say I fully support it.
Okay.
I would also have to look at alternatives and then weigh what is the best way to tackle the problem instead of, do I go with this solution?
And the last question, what would be the first action you would take as a legislator?
Speaking with current reps, my first action as a legislator, being one of the 120 in the House, would be to shut up and listen. They have a system that works up there. Like I said, in student government, when I was in college, I was a parliamentarian. I was also an executive board. There's rules, and you have to play by those rules. You have to understand how the system works before you go in there and start shouting. So I would say the first thing I would do is get up there and understand exactly how it works and exactly who the players are. Because you also have another house right next to you called the Senate, and you also have to play ball with them. When it came time for legislation, don't be surprised if my first act wouldn't be to repeal certain legislation in place.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it very much.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.